What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? How you guys doing out there? Long time no see. About a half hour, 45 minutes or so since we finished up the basketball show. Just got everything updated for football, ran another quick rerun of basketball, make sure I had everybody projected correctly for the starting lineups, for the correct rotations. Lot to get in the last couple of minutes here. Fell short of getting my football player-by-player game log notes put together, but for the one gamer, it won't really matter. We'll talk through some of the stats. We'll talk about a pretty high-end game environment here with Minnesota and the Rams. Solid game. A lot of upside on both sides. Should be a fun one for a change on a Thursday. The Rams getting Puka Nacua back. Potentially in somewhat limited form, but at least he's going to be out there. That gives him another big target. They've got Cooper Kupp back in the fold, obviously. Things starting to come together a little bit for Los Angeles, bring them back up to at least expectations for this season. But that was still only kind of a mid-board type of a team. Better squad on the other side. Definitely some very, very high-end options in the skill playing positions across the board in this one, though. Two pretty decent quarterbacks. Lot to work with in this one. What's going on, Andy? Appreciate you showing up for the double shift, my friend. Good to see you. Just a couple people in the door so far, late notice show, and a lot going on tonight, so I'm sure people will make their way in over the next few minutes. But we'll dive in here. We've got a 46.5 point total on the board to work with. Rams 2.5 point dogs at home, basically just kind of erasing the home field advantage. Interesting wrinkle to this game. We've got a lot of rumors. There's a little bit of smoke around the idea of these two quarterbacks getting traded for one another, and the Vikings picking up Stafford to make it, a true run, and then the Rams signing Darnold for a go forward. So that was kicking around a little bit. Stafford potentially a trade target in season-long leagues. People who haven't noticed that rumor, if you can pick him up on the cheap or grab him off the waiver wire if he's available, definitely an interesting option. And if he moves over, just as he's potentially getting back couple of premium targets, could potentially move over and start throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and working in a very, very high-end attack in Minnesota. So just interesting, as far as a wrinkle goes, but they've gotten good quarterback play this season out of Sammy Darnold. He actually leads the slate projection-wise on both sites up at the top of the board there. It's a decent opportunity for success with both quarterbacks. Showdown slate, we always want to be focusing on quarterbacks and talking about them and making sure that we're rostering them at least in the flex spot, especially on DK, where that salary pumps up a little bit. But they're going to be crucial pieces on both sides. We do have capable scoring defense involved here. Minnesota's defense, 8th ranked, 8.6% sack rate, and a first-ranked 4.31% interception rate. That amounts to 24 sacks and 11 picks on the season so far. On the other side, the Rams defense, 6.01% sack rate, just a 2.91% interception rate. That ranks 10th. They're not terrible in the defensive secondary. It's 5 interceptions so far. Just 11 sacks on a 28.6% pressure rate. Not ideal. I'm realizing that I didn't sort this board for you guys. Let me do that by teams here so that you can see it a little bit more sane-wise. There you go. So there's your Minnesota scoring, your Minnesota scoring side as far as the defense goes. They're also gaining a 32.4% pressure rate against the quarterback versus the 28.6% that the Rams have generated. That's not an insignificant pressure rate, but they haven't been finishing the quarterback off in most of the pressure situations. The Rams have allowed... Let's see if that updated correctly this time. Nope. 7.9 yards per pass attempt. Does rank 27th, but there's still, for whatever reason, in this download, I didn't have time to fix it. So that's actually a little bit higher than it looks, but still ranks 27th. And then the run one has been correct all along. 4.7 yards per rush attempt, still ranks 25th. They've given up 25.7 points per game versus the 17.8 that Minnesota's defense has given up. So there is a pretty stark contrast there. Against the run, Minnesota's allowing just 4 yards per rush attempt. That ranks 5th. 6.8 yards per pass attempt ranks 13th. But effective against both and not really allowing scoring. Just 0.5 rushing touchdowns per game. That's second best in the league. Allowing a little bit more scoring through the air. 1.7 passing touchdowns per game. So you can get them a little bit more with the pass, but it is a good aggressive defense. terms of Stafford's play, he's only thrown three touchdowns against 4 interceptions versus the 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions that Sammy Darnold is thrown on the other side. Stafford's throwing for more volume. He's throwing the ball 33 times a game, completing 66% of his passes, 7 yards per pass attempt versus the 8.3 yards per pass attempt that Darnold has managed so far. But Darnold just, working with better weapons so far this season, given the extended absences of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Again, both those guys coming back should elevate the situation for Stafford. We don't really know what we're dealing with as far as Nacua goes, as far as his opportunity to fully participate tonight, or maybe he's going to be just out there deployed as a decoy, deployed in a few big spots to maybe catch a big pass. But we know that both him and Cooper Kupp can be absolute volume monsters on the right day. When they're both on the field, it kind of whittles down to 60-40 favoring Kupp a little bit in terms of the targets. But there's major upside for both of those players when they're both active. So having them back should help bolster Stafford's upside. You've got a major rushing opportunity in Kyren Williams. He's gotten there largely on volume this season, 19.3 carries a game. He's putting up just 3.8 yards per rush attempt, but he's scored 8 times on the ground. That's not insignificant. 2.5 targets a game puts him over 20 potential touches per game. Definitely an interesting player. He's got 4.7 yards per target in the passing game, despite a negative 1.1 yard ADOT. So he's catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage and making something happen from time to time. 1 receiving touchdown on the season, but that puts him among the leaders in 9 touchdowns overall on the season. So pretty premium piece. He's going to be popular on a showdown slate. 11-2, the most expensive player on DraftKings. Nope. Justin Jefferson's the most expensive at 11.8. Second most expensive. 15.5 versus 16,000 for Jefferson. Same situation on FanDuel. I didn't notice the Puka is only 5,000 on FanDuel. That's obviously going to be a critical value smash spot kind of a situation. That's going to make him pop. I've got Sims running in the background, but I would have to think that that's going to make him pop in a pretty big way. 13.5 targets a game for Cooper Kupp in his limited action this season. But both these guys have missed significant time. Let me grab the... So yeah, Kupp coming back to a situation where he saw 21 targets in week 1, caught 14 passes for 110 yards and a touchdown, and then caught 4 of 6 on 18 routes in week 2 before succumbing to injury, and then has been out since, making his return tonight. And then Puka, 4 catches on 4 targets, and then he went down with injury. He was hurt through the preseason, active week 1, immediately got hurt. I do think he's going to be fragile through the season. I think they're going to treat him a little bit with kid gloves. So maybe you do see a diminished snap share, especially first week back. Maybe you do see a little bit of a diminished target share. He's just out there as a decoy running some routes. But this is a uniquely cheap price for the monster ceiling that he could have. Down the board, Colby Parkinson's been out there at the tight end spot throughout the season for them. He's drawing 5.7 targets a game. We've got a little bit of work with the depth receivers. Both of those guys could maybe stand the haircut, but I took them down already. But if you wanted to knock another half a point off of both of those guys' projections, I wouldn't have an issue with it if they're coming up a little bit much. But I do think with Puka coming back, it does diminish the popularity of both Tutu and Demarcus Robinson. The issue there is they're just only mediocre. 4.3 targets a game going in Robinson's direction on a 16.1 yard ADOT. It's pretty significant depth of target. 1 touchdown on the season and presumably fewer targets to work with in this one. And then Tutu Atwell, 5.7 targets a game, was a little bit more frequently looked for. 9.6 yard ADOT, 26% of the air yards, but has not scored this season. So you do have, believable targeting through these guys, but I would definitely, consider each guy at least diminished by 1 target, if not more than that, by the return of the 2 big receivers. So potentially a slow day where these guys just become more dart throw type options. Parkinson as a tight end, who is probably not going to be the most popular pick from this team for just 8,000 across sites. Not a bad investment on a showdown slate. Tutu looks really expensive at 10.5 on FanDuel. Seems like his price and Puka's price are just flipped over there. On FanDuel also, Demarcus Robinson, 9,000. These are $4,200 and $3,000 players on DraftKings, so there's a stark difference. DraftKings, it looks like, anticipated the return of at least one of the big receivers this week. Rams defense, just a mix and match shot. Their kicker looks a little bit better. 7.6 projected for him. He was coming up a little bit, it looked like. The defenses are always going to be in play, though. This does look like more of a high-scoring shootout kind of a game, and if you're going to one of the defenses, I prefer the higher-scoring Minnesota defense on the other side. But with expectation of point scoring coming down, I think we favor the kickers versus the defenses a little bit here. But both these can be rolled out. Other than that, Tyler Johnson, Blake Corum is just depth options down here that would significantly need something to happen. Johnson's been targeted a little bit. 3.7 targets a game, but those are largely going away, and it's just on a 5.7 yard ADOT, so it's really an underwhelming nature of the target anyway. Blake Corum's carried the ball 2 and change times per game for 4 yards per attempt, but he's playing behind a volume monster, so not really a big path to success for him right now. Ronnie Rivers has carried the ball 1.7 times per game for 5.1, but is playing behind Corum, who's playing behind Kyren Williams, so not a ton of upside for the downstream options on the Rams side. On the Vikes, again, better results on slightly lower volume for Sammy Darnold in the head-to-head between the quarterbacks, but that is a massive difference. 9 touchdown disparity between the two. He's thrown 5 picks to Stafford's 4, 12 touchdowns to 5 interceptions for him personally. Pretty significant 8.9 intended air yards per pass attempt and completing 8.3 yards per attempt. Fantastic connection with Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's picking up 8.5 targets a game on a 12.6 yard ADOT. He scored 5 times, drawn 44.9% of the air yards. By far the most significant air yards share in this entire game. On the other side, Jordan Addison, 25.1% of the air yards. He's got a monster depth of target, 18.0 yard average depth of target. Absolutely can fire away with shares of him. He's been targeted 5 times per game since his return. He scored once this season. Jalen Naylor, a bit more of a dart throw with Addison back in the fold the last couple of weeks. He scored 3 times on the season, though. They're looking in his direction about 3 times a game on an 11.9 yard ADOT. So another guy as the third banana in the passing attack now who could get involved on a deep route, pick up a big scoring event. That's ideal for a showdown slate. Checks in at just 62.75 across sites. Definitely makes him playable. 73% of the snaps last week with that, and that's with Addison playing 85%. Obviously, JJ's out there at 97%, but that's not an insignificant snap share. It's actually higher than he had played the week before. Another week with no TJ Hawkinson for this team, so we're just kind of splitting the baby at the tight end position between Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver here. Munt's been targeted a little bit more, 3 times per game, 5 times last week. Hasn't really put up much output. Both these guys have been in the end zone once. Oliver's slightly deeper targets in his limited action so far, just targeted once per game, but on a 10-yard average depth versus the 3.8-yard average depth. Either guy as a dart throw, especially showdown-oriented, you can definitely work in. Munt will be the more popular. He's the more highly projected across the industry, which makes Oliver the more interesting maybe dart throw. Slightly less expensive for Oliver on DK, same price on FanDuel. So that's an easy pivot around the ownership. You just need him to pick up the touchdown on the one target that he's likely to get. So consider it a 0 or a potentially slate-bending, 7 and change. We skipped over Aaron Jones. Primo rusher, carrying the ball 14.2 times per game for 5.2 yards per rush attempt. That's significant gains. 2 touchdowns on the ground. He hasn't been exactly scoring a ton. They tend to score more through the passing attack, but he's involved in that as well. 3.8 targets a game, not nothing. Limited 1.2 yard ADOT, but at least he's getting it out, getting the ball in his hands, hitting his hands in front of the line of scrimmage, and he's done something with it. 8.3 yards per target so far, 31 yards a game. He's got a touchdown on the board. Definitely, from scrimmage, a pretty high-end player who's putting up more than 100 yards per game from scrimmage. On, just 17.5 touches per game, or 17.5 potential touches a game, 105.5 yards from scrimmage. So even without the touchdown upside, there's significant scoring ability for Aaron Jones in terms of just putting up carries and breaking plays, and he's always got some touchdowns in his pocket. Kicker's on the board for sure. Higher projected kicker on this side. Better projected defense. Might have undercut Minnesota a little bit just based on the overall total there. Again, they are a high-scoring defense when it comes to sacks and interceptions. So you could give them a little bit of a nudge. If they're not coming up enough, you nudge the standard deviation, you nudge the projection, and you'll get to them a little bit more. Downboard for this team, again, same thing, limited options. Brandon Powell targeted once per game. It's an 11-yard ADOT. He does get up and get down the field, but it's very, very limited opportunities. Nothing but a dart throw at best. And that's really all he is. Ty Chandler with half the projection that Aaron Jones has, not even, a third of the projection that Aaron Jones has. He's carried the ball 7.3 times per game for 3.4 yards per rush attempt. Pretty limited there. Just one target per game in the passing attack. But it is a situation where on a showdown slate, if that rush happens to be in the red zone and he happens to get where he needs to go, you've got a pretty low-owned differentiation piece there. So I wouldn't rule him out. But he's not exactly burning up the board as far as shares are going to go when we look at results here in a sec. He has carried the ball 4 times in the red zone this season, once per game in each of the first 3 weeks, and then again in week 5, did not carry it in the red zone in weeks 4 or 7, and then they had a week 6 bye. But given the fact that they've put the ball in his hands within 20 yards of the end zone, he hasn't broken one and gotten there yet. But if you pick up, if this is the day, a touchdown plus 25-ish yards on his just typical average on a showdown slate, put me over 10 in a flex spot, totally happy with it. 3,600, different play than 9,500 on FanDuel for sure. So DraftKings more appealing. It's about the up and down for this list of players. Is that the case? Did I miss that? That was the 7 o'clock game, right? The basketball game. I missed that Bub was starting. You probably don't have enough minutes on him. Oops. I had Sar in there for his correct amount of minutes, but yeah, we're probably a little light on Bub on that one. Where did I have him? We'll see what he ends up doing. That might be a weak point for us. Just 3,000 there is definitely going to be a little bit of a value square there. That's what happens when we're juggling, jumping between sites. Mamba locked him in. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I didn't catch that. I don't know if that was up in that last update that I did before I flipped over. One to watch, though. Definitely going to be interesting to see how that shakes out with that really, really bad DC team. Let's, you know what I didn't do is set up the lineup builder. Like that. Oops. All right. Mama thinks Koulibaly's the value. Yeah, he was coming up a decent amount when we talked about it on the show. I forgot what the exact numbers were, but we were getting to him. I think a little bit more on FanDuel if memory serves. But that pisses me off that I missed the Bub starting thing. That must have been, yeah, you know what it was? I just skipped right over it. Because I read that tweet with the Wizards starting lineup. I had Poole, Carrington right there, and then Koulibaly, Kuzma, Sar. The one I went and double-checked that I had enough minutes on was Sar off of that, and I completely missed Carrington. Apologies, guys. I'll be better. Especially on days where we're not juggling. All right. Let's get... I'm going to start us with a Stafford captain. Just because I feel like between the two quarterbacks, maybe there's a little bit of edge there. Oh, this is going to be annoying. I got to... Hang on. Let me redo what I just did. I got to put these in salary order, otherwise it'll be a pain in the ass. Fun with copy pasting. All right. The quarterbacks are cheap. 96 and 94 for a couple of high-end quarterbacks is not bad. Yeah, it's probably 2-2 is probably the better decision there. He's going to be popular, though. And 53, like Cardi right there. It's easy. Vikings D. It's probably not the best choice against us. Stafford +2. Is it going to be? Wow. 3 dupes? I'll take that lineup all day. Stafford, Puka, 2-2. Darnold to Addison. And Cardi for a couple of kicks. And it's only going to be duped 3 times. Sign me up. I like that one. I was not expecting that to get down that low. Interesting. I think that might speak to Stafford in the captain role a little bit. It's an interesting one. See what happens if we reverse. Go this direction. Yeah, let's stick with Addison. We'll do like an Addison and where's Aaron Jones? Aaron Jones is involved enough to pay off a Darnold passing upside, and then you got a couple of cheap options right here that you pad out Stafford with. 38 dupes on that one. That's so, wow. That's upside down compared to that first one. I like that first one better. 51. If you wanted to go like Stafford to just say Parkinson and then get my Minnesota defense on this one and leave some salary on the board. That's 167. Oh, no, it's not because there's no... 33 dupes again. If you take that away, you have 5. You could go like here, or you could go to Reichard. That's duped a lot, but that's not an uninteresting way to approach a Vikings wipeout. I was going to do that. Maybe I cut this. And you could still give Stafford somebody to throw to. Really, Stafford would just need to throw it away once to create a scoring event for the Vikings D and then add up a couple sacks. And then even if he connects someone with whoever this is going to be for a touchdown, we're still fine. Can't get Kupp, can't get Nakua at that price, though. Unless you take Addison out. That's not going to help us. Don't want to do that. What happens if I try and jam Puka in here? What am I left with? 45. That's still workable because we do still have like Johnny Munt down here. Ty Johnson. Or Ty Chandler, rather. Demarcus Robinson also qualifies for that list. 2-2 still fits in at just 42. DraftKings did you a favor by making those guys that cheap because that's another, interesting enough lineup. The ownership projection on Puka is probably lower than it's going to end up coming in at. Just a guess. Because he was in both of the ones that cut down into low single digits. But this is another one that's a totally viable lineup. Obviously, none of those were using Justin Jefferson or Kyron Williams, though. So, temper expectations for some of those. Lean into this one a little bit. Let's see. Oh, it's only 1,200 per spot left. I forgot who I had in there. Let's take Aaron Jones back out of it. Let me stick with my inclination to go with the Vikings D there. I still got 18, and I can still get Josh Oliver as that weird differentiator tight end. If he catches that touchdown for me, that's a winner. Just a matter of doing it. So it's essentially a Vikings wipeout, but a Kyron captain, and you just got to have Kyron basically do everything for the Rams. That said, with both high-volume receivers coming back, I'm not entirely sure that's what happens. I think you're probably better off with a construction that at least includes a piece of that. It's easy enough to do if you go like Stafford. I think we can make this work. You're throwing a dart at it. Does that work? No. That's the entire. I got to look at what's actually remaining there. So it's probably not viable with those three players with Kyron and the captain. Wouldn't be viable with Jefferson up there either. But if you go Darnold up there and Kyron down there, I think it's more feasible probably. Let's see. 1950 per spot. So I think, you could go like Oliver. You're getting really thin, though. Yeah, probably not. So getting all four of those guys, difficult proposition. Stafford's a little bit cheaper than Darnold, though, so maybe that puts us over the line. That's 23. So you fall just short of being able to get to one of those guys. You'd have to get to a Brandon Powell, Ronnie Rivers type, and these are the even longer, even bigger dart throws. If you did it, if I put Brandon Powell here, that's going to erase any dupes. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe not the craziest thing. You could do that, and then you could upgrade that tight end from Oliver to Johnny Munt, who will see more targets, and that gives you a little bit more reliability. You're still only duped 1.5 times. It's just you need that target to go in Brandon Powell's direction, and you need him to succeed with it. But for a showdown, I mean, that's what we're looking for. Showdown is a lot more possibility-oriented and differentiation-oriented, and a path to getting different is doing something like that, and that is your only, in my opinion, viable path to putting all four of these guys in on DraftKings. So it's interesting that you can cut it down as low-owned as it is, but you're putting two pretty thin pieces in there. Nice, Greg B. and Cone. Greg says, nice little bink on Monday. Thank you. DK3 Gamer Sunday and Monday. Odd Lamar, Henry, bait and stack. Roto Scouts did the trick. Love it. Awesome, dude. Love to hear it. Henry's a beast, isn't he? I just traded for him in the season-long league. I'm in 9th out of 10, but I couldn't resist. Traded my my number one and a couple of keepers, Bucky and Josh Downs, in like the 15th and 16th rounds next year, plus my number one. But I got back Hall. I got back Henry, Tyreek with Tua coming back, Devontae Adams, and Trey McBride. So 4 pretty prominent players to add to my pathetic squad. I just couldn't resist loading up like that. I'm going to try and make a run from the way we do scoring is in the thousands, but it's basically just like a 10x on top, or 100x on top, rather. Couldn't resist the opportunity to chase with a ridiculous lineup like that. FanDuel-wise, you know what? 7:17. Did anything weird happen in the 7:30? Is there a 7:30 NBA? What's the schedule? Spurs Mavs is 7:30. Is anything weird there? Let me just make sure. Irvington, Washington. Maybe nudge the minutes on Gafford slightly higher. Probably should. Let me handle that real quick. While I'm doing that, I will do this for you guys. Oh, come on. It's a big waste of time. What is going on here? It's like scrolling out of control. Some DK Ace Mind sim results here. You guys can just look at those lineups real quick. Wow, Cardi captain up top. Josh Oliver, Blake Corum captain. What the fuck? I'm not entirely sure that this ran correctly. That is taking an interesting path to value and putting all four of those players that I was just working with before, Jefferson, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp. Actually, that one's Kupp and Stafford and Darnold. This next one is Jefferson, Kyron, Sam Darnold, and Stafford, the ones I was working with before. So interestingly, and I hadn't considered that, putting a super value in the captain spot seems to be simming out pretty well across those top ones. This might not be incorrect. Because as you scroll down, you do see more of it, but you've also got some Pukas and some Darnolds in the captain spot there. That is a really interesting result. I got hung up on that. We'll talk about that in... Yeah, I don't know about this either, Mamba. Like on FanDuel, obviously, you're not seeing that because there's no multiplier. It's just because of the multiplier, but it could be the case because of how highly projected and highly salaried all those guys are. You saw me just a minute ago on how far down I had to go to get those guys in when one of them was the captain. So to make it viable lineups with all four of those guys and then another piece that's, you know, kind of okay, taking some discounts at those captain spots is coming through a little bit here. You're not talking about like wildly differentiated lineups, but those are a couple $100 winners in these sims. That's interesting. A lot more security, obviously, and go in a different direction toward one of these like Darnold and the captain and so on and so forth type lineups. And if we look, 17% captain for Darnold, 67% in the flex. If you look at Stafford, just 3% captain, but 55% flex makes a ton of sense to me. Kyron, 4% captain, 51% flex. Justin Jefferson only came up in the flex. I don't love these results. Might be a little screwy. Probably something in my upload went a little wacky. Maybe the ownership was screwed up in there somewhere. I don't love these. Derek White just won Mamba $1,000 in 5 minutes. Sounds pretty good. Let's flip over to the FanDuel results here real quick. There's some ideas for you. Sammy Darnold in a ton of them. Puka, obviously, coming up in all the FanDuel lineups because he's free. Stafford, Justin Jefferson, there's a clear path to getting just major straight line to all the easy, obvious players. But that's how you also get a bunch of dupes, I'm sure. But some decent cashers there. You know, high 90s. Only one lineup getting into the 100 range, though. A lot of ties on this board, I'm guaranteeing you. A lot of Sammy Darnold, Justin Jefferson back and forth in the MVP spot. Some Kyron Williams in there. So, all right, let me do this real quick. Whoops. You know what? I think that's going to wrap it up, actually. Appreciate all you guys hanging out. Let me jump so that I can just throw a quick update up on the NBA site. Mamba says this should be a game controlled by running backs, likes Jones up top for a captain. Yeah, and that's a totally viable play. He's been terrific this season as far as the yards per attempt. I talked about it during the show, was over 100 yards from scrimmage on average per game. So totally like Aaron Jones, and if he's under-owned in your MVP spot, your captain spot, so much better. Definitely can fire up some of that. So Works pretty well for me. Clunky show with the sim results, guys. Sorry, I just don't want to say for sure the gospel that those are good results when I don't know for sure, and I want to get NBA updated. So, going to jump. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something once again. We'll be back tomorrow for NBA, and we will work our full-blown NFL main slate show in here somewhere over the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. NFL data and content will start hitting the site overnight tonight, tomorrow morning, and we'll be off and running for the main slate. But let me punch out. I'll see you guys very soon. Adios.